International. I'm here with Phil Cooke, who's a best-selling author, media consultant, film producer. Pretty much if it has anything to do with media, he's killing it. How you doing, man?
Very good, thank you. That's a very nice introduction. I may record that. I like it.
You should. So, how long have you been doing media for?
Oh man, a long time. I started college as a piano major. I started as a music major until I met the faculty and realized they were serious. So I got out of there fast. And I enrolled in film because I thought, well, that's an interesting thing. And I had made films in high school with a bunch of friends, never thinking I'd actually do it for a living.
Right.
And lo and behold, here I am.
Wow.
Been a long time.
Wow. Now, would you agree with the statement that media is really one of the main shapers of culture today?
Yeah, I actually think media is culture. You know, media is the values, the morals, the credibility, the concern, the trends, the lifestyles. Mm-hmm. Media is like the highway that all that stuff is transmitted on. You know, we communicate through iPhones and computers and email and television and radio, and it's just the way culture is transmitted, really. So I think media is far greater right now, far more significant than at any time in history. And so if you have a message, I believe if you have a message, you've got to take media into consideration if you want to get it out.
Yeah, most definitely. Where do you see media going? You know, where do you see the future trends?
Well, you know, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be a billionaire. But, you know, it's interesting because today in the Wall Street Journal, there was a feature story on the fact that classic record sales, you know, CD sales, are at the lowest point since charts have been recorded. Wow. And so I think it's 44,000 CDs were sold last month nationwide, which means that, you know, digital downloads are far more significant than ever. And going to a store and actually buying a CD, that's becoming a more and more rare event. So that's just one example of the music industry going through a fundamental change. Just this week in the LA Times, they had a chart of how the music industry, movie industry, books, publishing, television had all done this year, and every single one had a little arrow down. Wow. So there's no question that there's a fundamental shift in the way we are pursuing media, the way we want entertainment to be delivered to us, and probably some of the smartest minds in the country are trying to figure it out.
Right. We've definitely seen that in the music industry. You know, less bands going to record labels, trying to, work with them. Is there a shift happening like that in the movie industry as well?
Yeah, you know, I'm a hardcore film goer. There's nothing I like as much as sitting in a room with a big giant screen and watching in the theater and having popcorn with a crowd of 200 or 300 people. But the fact is, now I've got my big giant plasma screen at home. Right. I've got DirecTV. I got an Apple TV unit for Christmas, and so I can download stuff off the internet. Wow. Man, it's getting tougher and tougher to pry me out of that easy chair I have at home. So there's no question that Hollywood understands that it's more and more difficult to draw people to the theater. And as a result, the biggest culprits are going to be people on dates, 14-year-old boys who want to get away from the house. And as a result, movies are not becoming more and more intellectual. And what you'll find is the more talented writers and producers are actually moving from film to television. Wow. Because television is suddenly with HBO and Showtime and AMC.
It's true.
You see Mad Men. I was watching The Walking Dead this week. They're replaying the first season on AMC, which is a huge, big budget extravaganza. Wow. And so you're seeing a lot more of the thinking writers and producers and directors shifting to television because they're able to go deeper into subjects over long periods of time.
With all this shifting and changing in the media and whatnot, what do you see from the church perspective? Like, do you think that one day, people will just be, streaming the church service straight to their smartphone, or?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just did a podcast that's going to come out, I think, very shortly on influence and encouraging pastors to make your message a budget line item. It's funny. Pastors create a budget line item for the parking lot stuff. They create one for Sunday school or one for missions or one for this, that, and the other. They never think about creating a budget line where they actually dedicate a budget to getting their message out. And the truth is, for most pastors, that's their most important job. You know, discipling and teaching people is what they do. And yet most don't really take it seriously when it comes to how do we build a platform to get it out. And in many ways, that's what media is all about. Media is about having a strategy for building the kind of platform that lets your message reach the greatest number of people. And so I'm always encouraging pastors to think seriously about a strategy for should I be doing books? Should I be getting my sermon series into a DVD set or a product that we can get out into people's homes? It's not just about trying to make money. It's not just about ego. It's really about how do we get our message into the hands of the most number of people. And so I think it's a crime that pastors don't think more and more strategically about using the media.
For sure, for sure. Now, do you see eventually there being a need for a position, like a graphics guy, video guy, like you have your youth pastor, children's pastor, is eventually one day there'll be the media pastor?
Well, you know what, obviously preaching is incredibly paramount. Being a good speaker, being a good preacher, being a good teacher is critical. Personal relationships are critical. But there's no question that as a new generation emerges, they're a much more media literate generation. Yeah. And so they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're online in a variety of different social media platforms and ways. And they're also watching television. Nielsen released some interesting statistics just a few months ago that in spite of the incredible growth of the internet, television broadcasting audiences are still at an all-time high.
Right.
So television is not going to go away. It's not going to, internet's not displacing TV or movies. They're always going to be there. And I do think that pastors have to more and more understand that if they're going to be totally effective in reaching their community or reaching audiences, media has to be a part of that mix.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the 80s are they've come back. We're kind of moving more into the 90s now. But fashion, all that stuff from the 80s came back. What was your favorite television show from the 80s?
Oh, man. That's a good question. The 80s were a dark period for me on TV, I have to say. Of all the years of my life, that's probably my trough, the lowest period of TV watching for me.
Really?
I went from being fanatical in the 60s and 70s, with wacky shows like Andy Griffin and Gomer Pyle and all those things growing up. And then I went to college and never watched TV hardly. And then I went out and when I started in the business in the late 70s and early 80s, TV specials were the thing, big musical variety specials. And I worked on some with Sid and Marty Krofft here in Los Angeles when they were producing the Barbara Mandrell show and, big musical, over-the-top, cheesy extravaganzas. And then in the 80s, I don't know, I kind of checked out. And I'll tell you this. My favorite show right now, and this is the secret because it's kind of my guilty pleasure, is Hoarders. You know that show, Hoarders?
Yeah.
Collect all the junk. Oh, my gosh. I'm endlessly fascinated with that. Endlessly fascinated. I think I'm not a huge reality fan. But when it comes to odd people, I'm absolutely transfixed by it. I could watch that show for hours.
Are you a hoarder? A little bit of a hoarder?
No. It's funny. I'm not. In fact, I told my wife that when we have to go to the rest home, all the stuff that we treasure is going to go into a garage sale. So I have no pride about my possessions. So we're going to start thinning things out immediately, and so my kids don't have to do that. So no, I'm the last thing from being a hoarder.
Nice. Now, you have a reputation for being blunt. Reading your book, Branding Faith, you really you tell it like it is. You don't really sugarcoat things, and working in the religious, world, pastors like to tell it like it is, but they don't really like to be told.
Yeah,
like it is. So, how's that worked out for you?
Well, it's really hard. It's really hard for me because that's how I make my living. I mean, I work with media ministries and churches that are involved in media, so in many ways I'm biting the hand that feeds me. But hopefully that actually gives me some credibility. It's funny that when I did my book, The Last TV Evangelist, Why the Next Generation Couldn't Care Less About Religious Media, when I sent that, my agent sent that out to a number of different publishers, mostly Christian publishers because of the subject, and one sent me back an interesting letter. They said, "We love this book, but we can't publish it because it would jeopardize our relationship with too many media ministries." Wow. And I took their name off and used it as an endorsement for my book. because I thought, it gives me a lot of credibility. I think my readers understand that, I'm speaking the truth about this stuff, and I think it's important that I go out on the edge a little bit. So I try to be nice, and and most of the time I do it, I'm poking fun. I'm not. I think the web is filled with angry, bitter, crazy people, and I certainly don't do it from an angry, bitter perspective. I mostly try to poke fun a little bit, but because we do a lot of dumb things, and we're all guilty. Yeah. And but I do think. Here's the bottom line. The bottom line is how we engage this culture is incredibly critical. And if our perception is whacked, they're never going to listen to our message. The bottom line is we live in the most distracted culture in the history of media. Some researchers in Britain say that we're being bombarded with as many as 5,000 media messages a day. So in that world, it's not just a matter of having a great message. It's how does that message cut through?
Right. How's it stand out?
Yeah, and so as Christians, our perception, if our perception is not good, they're never going to take the time to listen to our message. So I think the things that I write about and speak on mostly are, let's stop doing the bonehead things, because if we're doing stupid things and the culture looks at that, and say one TV evangelist or one ministry leader or one pastor does something really stupid, it makes all Christians look bad. And so I think we need to clean our own house. We need to stop criticizing the culture so much and start cleaning up our own house a little bit if we're going to really be effective in engaging the culture.
That
was a mouthful. I apologize.
No, it was wonderful. It was great. What questions should pastors, ministry leaders, ministers, business owners be asking themselves when it comes to their organization?
Well, number one, who is their congregation? Who is their potential audience? For instance, I work with Philip and Holly Wagner in Oasis Church in L.A., and one thing that Philip and Holly have done is they're brilliant at building cultures for 20 and 30-somethings. Okay. They've got this church in the heart of Hollywood, and since day one, they have just built this environment, created this incredible culture that attracts young people. Honesty, authenticity, credibility, all the things that 20 and 30-somethings really value, and they're just naturally good at it. They're brilliant at it. And so I think number one is, who's your audience? For them, their audience is 20 and 30-somethings from Hollywood, a significant number which have come out from all over the country to be in, seek their fame and fortune in the movie industry. Others may have an audience or a congregation of older folks or middle-aged people or business people. Every, pastor tends to attract certain types of folks, I think. And so, first of all, understand your audience. How to connect with them, how to reach them, what's important to them, and also where they are. Are they on Facebook a lot? Are they Twittering? Do they watch broadcast TV or radio? Or do they more go for live events, Sunday services, and things like that? So I'm a big believer that you need to start asking questions about who your audience is and how to connect with them. That's the place to start.
That's great. Now, in your book, Branding Faith, which is an incredible book, I completely, totally recommend it for, if you're a pastor or business leader, whatnot. You talk about this before you brand and market yourself, discovering your story. Yeah. So, a couple of questions with that. How do you discover your story? And then, how important is the name within that? Now, I asked that question because it's really popular right now to name your church after, like, a downtown, LA club, and like Oasis. And you have some churches that are struggling, and they're like, called the Fire Lounge. And then you have some that are killing it, and they're like the, Full Grace Gospel Assembly.
Tabernacle of the Holy Spirit.
Tabernacle of the Holy Spirit. And you're like, what in the world?
Yeah, names matter. And when I wrote the book Branding Faith, it was really the first time that the conversation about branding had been brought into the church world in a significant way. And branding is, most people are terrified of the word, most pastors. And the truth is, branding, it's not capitalism gone crazy. It's not sweatshops in Asia. It's not greed. It's simply a compelling story that surrounds an organization or a product or a person. So the truth is, everyone has a brand because, quite simply, a brand is, what do people think of when they think of you? Right. What do people think of when they think of your church? What do people think of when they think of your ministry? Or what do people think of when they think of whatever? And really, a brand is it's something we can influence, but it's ultimately not what we say it is, it's what they say it is. And just like I said before, it's that perception is so incredibly important. In a world where people are so distracted, that perception matters. So the key thing is in kind of finding your story. It's really that compelling story about who you are. And in finding that, number one, I always go to what is the thing that really drives you? One thing I like to ask pastors is, if I held a gun to your head and said there's only one thing you could preach or teach on for the rest of your life, what would that be? And very often that gets them thinking about, okay, what is the thing I'm most passionate about? What do I think of when I wake up in the morning? What's the last thing I think of before I go to bed? I'll give you a great example is Jack Hayford in Los Angeles. Jack is an incredible pastor, highly respected. Jack is just the Protestant Pope. I mean, he's just a brilliant guy. And I've always told people that Jack, been to his church for probably 20 years. And I've heard Jack preach on everything, family issues and redemption and the atonement and the nativity and just everything. But you cut Jack, he will bleed worship. Wow. Worship is what drives him. He not only teaches about it, he's written books about it, he's written over 100 worship songs. He actually leads the worship in church. So what he does is, every single thing he preaches about, no matter what it is, he kind of does it through the filter of worship. So in many ways, worship would be Jack's brand. That's the story that drives him, and that's what he's all about. And so when you tap into that, suddenly you realize, what is the thing that drives me, that I'm most passionate about? And that's probably the way you will communicate to an audience most effective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally does. For churches and organizations, what would you say are the three most important areas of media for them to focus on?
Well, the first place I think is obviously starting with a website, because it's the cheapest to do. But think of the website not in terms of being a bookmark. A lot of pastors put up a website and they never change it again. And our experience has been, if people go to your website twice and nothing has changed, they'll never go back again. Mm-hmm. So a website is an amazing tool. It can store your sermon archives, past messages for people. It can store all kind of events and study resources. It can be an online Bible. So not only is it how to find my church and what time my services are, it can provide a resource to a lot of different people. And so I really think that a website makes you global. Anybody in the world can suddenly access your church. So that's important. The next thing I'd recommend is understand the power of social media.
Huge.
It's really interesting that I've had a situation in my own life recently where I discovered that the power to influence model, if you will, is dramatically shifting because of social media. Suddenly, guys with multi-million-dollar ministries and TV programs that air around the world and huge mailing lists and donors, suddenly they're starting to be intimidated by a Twitter post or a Facebook update or any other. And what you'll see is they understand the viral nature of social media is a powerful thing. And so there's no question in my mind that if you can harness the power of social media, it will make a dramatic difference in your own ministry, because it becomes a viral thing. And the other thing, too, is, let me say this. Google, I always tell people that Google is not just about search. It's about reputation management. Trust, the river of information that flows into Google is staggering, and pastors can't hide anymore. It used to be that, that DUI you got in college that you thought everybody had forgotten about. Guess what? It'll show up in a Google search. All the stuff you've done, it will show up. And it's not it's just that river is so huge. So I always say, in a digital age, in an online age, we need to live more transparent lives than ever, because you just can't hide anymore. Your eccentricities, the little weirdnesses that you do, messing around with the money, having an affair, whatever your problem is, whether you're a pastor or a business leader or a politician, the web has created a society where you have to be really transparent. Reputation management, it's critical.
Yeah. And I definitely, I understand that there's a lot of ways that churches out there, they can do social media for free.
And the thing, I think you're exactly right. I think you're really touched on to something important, and it's really about having a strategy. I think where pastors miss the boat is, it's not about random Twittering or random Facebook updates. It's really about, okay, I don't care how many friends you have online. I want to know, can you mobilize those friends to accomplish something? Whether you want them to attend an event or buy a book or do this or do a mission outreach, whatever. That's what you want. And so that happens only through real strategic thinking about what I want to accomplish through my Twitter feed or through my Facebook feed and those kind of things. Right. You know, we all Twitter for fun. We all say stuff, just silly stuff for fun. But underlying it should be a plan. It should be an idea of, okay, I'm trying to establish myself as this kind of person, or my ministry is this kind of ministry, or my outreach, and you want to go somewhere with it.
Low budget-wise, what are some ideas that you could throw out there that churches could focus on? Because right now, I mean, the economy's hit churches everywhere, and they've cut spending all sorts of places. Their budgets are much different. From a media standpoint, what do you think they should be putting their money into right now?
Well, I'll tell you a couple things that I find interesting. One that pastors hardly ever think of, and that is encouraging their congregation to go online and talk about it. Probably the simplest thing. Google operates, when you do search results, it operates on activity, constantly updating, changing activity. And so if your entire congregation was twittering about the service or doing Facebook updates about your message and about the events that we're doing or the activities that are coming up at your church, you'd be amazed at the activity that would pop up, or other people blogging about it. So number one, and I would say this from the pulpit, I would be very bold about it. Encourage your church members, your congregation, to talk about your church online. It's interesting that there's a company here in LA that recently started a different way of rating the top 10 primetime programs. Nielsen, as you know, has always done it by rating the most watched programs. Well, a new company stepped up recently and started rating the top 10 primetime TV programs based on online conversations. They started scanning the web to find out what programs people are talking about. And it's interesting, their top 10 was dramatically different from Nielsen's top 10. Wow. And what they discovered was a lot of shows like Lost or Keith Sutherland's 24, those kind of shows people watch on their television, but at the same time they've got their laptop in their lap talking to their friends about it online. And I think the future of television is shows that are so provocative, so interesting and fascinating that they create online conversations. So the power of getting more and more people to talk about your church or your outreach or your project is really, really critical. And I think the other thing, too, is don't think that television and certainly online video are just automatically too expensive. I'm in one of our edit rooms here at our company in Cooke Pictures, and we have 3 high-definition Avid edit bays, all tricked out, post-production suites. And we're finding that a lot of the churches and ministries that used to farm stuff out for us to do, maybe it was a donor development video, or maybe it was their weekly program, or a product development commercial, or whatever, missions outreach video, things they used to farm out. Now they're having some kid in their youth department cut it on his Final Cut Pro and his laptop.
Right.
And I don't like it, but it really shows you how inexpensive media has become. That a school kid with Final Cut Pro on his Mac can now edit your missions video, edit your year-end video, all kind of things like that. So video is, even broadcast television is getting more and more affordable. So don't automatically think that's out of it. And I would say one other thing. Don't look at the past model of a lot of the abuses that some television evangelists have done and assume that's not for me. Just because some people do it badly doesn't mean you can't be the guy that changes the paradigm. So I'd love for Christian men and women to start thinking differently about, okay, if we put a program on television, how could it be different from what we're seeing today? Let's start opening our mind a little bit and seeing how we can change that paradigm.
Again, with everything changing so fast and churches wanting to, change their brands and their logos, would you suggest that, they pick kind of their design more towards the future or for the now? When I think about it, I think about fashion, trends in fashion. You see something, you think, man, I'll never wear that, but a year from now, you're wearing it.
Yeah, it's funny. We talked earlier about my book Jolt. It's coming out in April, and I've got a couple quotes in here about that very thing. It's really funny. I love Wayne Gretzky, the hockey legend's quote, who said, the reason I'm successful is I don't skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck is going to be.
Wow.
And Ralph Winter, my friend and partner in one of our companies here, who produced Wolverine, X-Men, Planet of the Apes, major film producer here in Los Angeles, said something interesting that I actually quoted in my book. He said that to be successful at a major big budget movie, you can't just know what's popular now. You have to know what's popular 5 years from now, because that's how long it takes to write the script, develop the film, get it shot, get it edited, get it in the theaters. So I do agree that we need to be thinking about the future. It's funny, I wrote Jolt because we're undergoing the greatest period of disruption in our history. I mean, everything is changing. We're being overwhelmed with really radical change. And so I think so many people are throwing up their hands and quitting. Right. And the truth is, I think Jolt outlines how to live your life and navigate change successfully. I think you can use it to your favor. So churches that fear change, business people, business CEOs and leaders that fear this incredible disruption that's happening in the economy and the business world, I think you can actually turn the tables on it. And after 30 years of working with churches and ministries and nonprofits, helping them understand the power of change, I realized that, you know what, you can use those same principles to make change happen in your own life. And so that's why I wrote the book, because I think it's incredibly important that we master these changes that we see happening around us and use it for our benefit.
So now in Jolt, it really does deal with people personally. So there's, I think, 25 things that can jolt you. Yeah,
I've worked with organizations all my life, and I ultimately discovered that organizations don't change, people change. And so until you get the people to change in a ministry or a church, policies won't matter, vision won't matter, mission won't matter. You have to get the people to understand the power of change. And so I ended up putting these things down in a book called Jolt. Get the jump on a world that's constantly changing, and I'm really excited about it, because for the first time, it's a book that I think will really help people understand the changes that are happening in the culture, and how to everybody tells you need to change. Your wife tells you, your husband, your doctor, your pastor, whoever tells you need to change, but nobody really tells you how. Right. And this is a step-by-step process of okay, you want to lose weight, you want to go back to college, you want to get a new job, you want to, whatever the way you want to change your life, here's a step-by-step guide toward helping you make that happen. So I'm really excited about it. It's going to be interesting.
Can you crack it real quick and just give us maybe like one or two little tidbits?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I talk about is I open with the fact that I was fired when I was 36 years old. And one of the things research tells you is that you want change until until you're really forced into it, until there's no way out. As long as there's a way out, generally speaking, we will not change. And when I was 36 years old, had two young daughters, I was married with two young daughters, and I was working at an organization in the Midwest, I got fired. And I was devastated.
Wow.
But once I moved, it's what caused me to come to California. And once I moved on with my life, I realized it was the best thing that could have possibly happened to me, because that jolt, if you will, was what it took. I got lulled into a regular paycheck. I got lulled into a normal job and making my house payment. And you make unbelievable numbers of excuses in those situations. Well, I believe that there's a lot of security here. My kids go to a good school. Maybe the Lord wants me here. Blah, 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 blah. And when what we really need is a jolt or a slap upside the head, and that's what I got. So one of my opening chapters is about, when you hit the wall like that, embrace it. Because sometimes, no matter how terrible it is, if you've been dumped by your husband or wife, or you've been fired from your job, or you've got that cancer diagnosis or something horrible, that could be the jolt that could actually transform your life. So stop worrying about hitting that wall and realize that when I run out of options, that's the one ticket out. That's what's going to force me to make a change in my life. So that's the way it opens, and it takes off from there. So I think it's kind of interesting, and it'll maybe encourage a lot of people who are facing really challenging times, particularly right now.
People can go online to, what is it, Jolt?
JoltYourLife.com.
JoltYourLife.com.
Yeah.
And you've got a video on there, and you talk all about it.
And it's also available at my website, philcooke.com, Cooke with an E, Philcooke. And or they can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever, and order it from there as well.
You just redid your website.
I did.
You did a whole new look. What brought that about?
Well, you know, I'm a little on the ADD side, as you probably noticed here. And so, actually, I don't have ADD. I have a very high distraction factor. I get distracted. In fact, it's funny. We have a joke here at the office that my home office, where I write my books, I have to put shutters on the windows, because if there's a window, I will look out. And I have to turn off everything. I do my best reading on airplanes because I can't escape. And so I've learned to force myself into certain things. Right. But what was the question? I totally forgot the question.
You just redid your website.
Oh, the website. Yeah, so as a result, I get bored easy, and plus it was time. You know, you stick with something for a while, it's time to refresh. And so I wanted to kind of rethink the brand, and as you change, my business is shifting. I'm doing a lot more consulting, a lot more speaking, a lot more writing, and I'm speaking a lot more conferences than ever, really. And so I wanted to kind of shift to make that evident, and also change up my blog a little bit. I'm making some changes to that. So philcooke.com, you can get my podcast, my blog, my books, all those kind of things. And so we did a pretty massive redo, and we're real happy with it. Still working a few bugs out, but it's always fun developing new ideas and new things. We've gotten a good reception.
Oh, love it. Looks great. How often do you suggest people rebrand?
Rebranding is a big question. What we generally recommend is every year or two, probably every 2 years, you refresh the brand. Refreshing doesn't mean new logo or anything like that. It just means you update it a little bit, because you know, styles change, trends change, and so sometimes it's good to keep up with those changes. You don't have to completely radically rethink what you're doing, but just every couple years make some minor changes in what you're doing. One of the things I would say about that is understand that a logo is not your brand. A logo is the visual expression of your brand. The brand is that story, that compelling story about who you are. And you need to try to identify that. But once you've done it, the logo should be the visual expression of that. It should instantly, I mean, there are thousands of billboards across this country that have nothing on them but the black Nike swoosh. No pictures, no text, no words, just the swoosh. And yet millions of people drive under those billboards every day and totally understand what that iconic symbol means. And the question is, does your logo have that kind of power? You want it to have that kind of expressive power so people instantly understand what it is. So I think if somebody tells you, hey, we've got a new logo, I've got a new brand, that's not the case. It's, you know, you come up with a brand first, then design the logo.
Then design your logo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. A last great movie you saw, and did you get emotional in it? Can you get emotional in it because you know all the ins and outs of...
That's a great question. Early on, I quit being a know-it-all. You know, I used to sit, when I was in college or shortly thereafter, I would sit in movies and just criticize everything. Oh, that shot was out of focus, or that cut was too late. And I realized I'm being a jerk. I'm being a total jerk. Not to mention, I don't enjoy the movies.
Right.
So I have become the most gullible guy on the planet. You can make some amazing mistakes in a movie, and it still sucks me in. The last film I saw was The King's Speech, actually, which I highly, highly, highly recommend. It was great film, and it's a great leadership lesson. In fact, I blogged about it just the other day, and it was just a terrifically, you know, it's not just a well-crafted film, but it's got some things you can really walk away with. So I highly recommend The King's Speech. Go see it. It's terrific.
Yeah, I read that blog, and I've noticed on a lot of your blogs now, it's kind of moving more into the personal, you know, leadership type stuff, and kind of moving away a bit from the mass media.
Yeah.
And with your new book, Jolt and stuff, do you find yourself kind of moving into that, you know, naturally moving into that?
Yeah, you know, I think so. That's a good question that I've wrestled with a little bit, frankly. And I used to just report about the media business, and most of the stuff I do kind of tilts that way. Right. However, I have gotten more and more into helping people kind of navigate this change that's happening out there. And really, the media is what's driving this change in many ways, and technology. So I think that I'm always going to have some mix of the two. I'll tell you where my focus is going to be in the future, I think, and that is helping people figure out what their story is and how to build a platform for getting that story heard. I think my next book is probably going to have something to do with influence, because I think, particularly as Christians, we need to understand how influence works. It's not about power. It's not about abuse or power, but it's about trying to influence the culture. And the problem is we have a great message, but most of us fail at understanding the power of influence and how to make it happen. So I just wrote a proposal for a book that my agent is out there pitching right now on the subject of influence. And I think that that's very exciting for me, because I think the key is, how do we, particularly during this period of incredible change that I talk about in Jolt, how do we take that change and use it to get our message heard and get our story told? And I think that's going to be incredible.
Was Jolt birthed, right now there's more emphasis than ever on having a personal brand.
Yes. Yeah. Personal branding matters. Yeah, because it's about perception, and everybody has a perception about you or me.
Right.
You have a perception just as much as, Oprah has one, Tom Cruise has one, just like Starbucks has one or Nike has one. So, or your local church has one.
Right.
So one of the important keys is, in order to be heard, if we want, for instance, I'll give you some examples, and I know we've got to wrap this up, but
right.
I'll give you some great examples. If you're in a company and you're struggling to get your voice heard, your projects heard, or your ideas heard in meetings, that's a perception issue. If they don't think you have value, they're not going to listen to your ideas. It's the same thing in school. It's the same thing at church in a lot of places. So if you're a pastor and you have a message that you want to share with your community, but nobody's listening, how do you make that happen? Influence is absolutely critical, whether you're in the business world, whether you're a mom trying to speak out at a PTA meeting because you have a concern that's important to you.
Wow.
How do you get that message heard? And I think unless we understand the vehicles and the platforms for how to do it, no matter how great our message is, if nobody's listening, we fail. So that's where my heart is and my concern is, and I think I want to start working on something along that line. Jolt is the start, because Jolt, I think the book Jolt is helping us understand how to get through this incredible world of change. And then my next book will probably be on, once that happens, how do we get our message heard? And I think that's critical.
Wow. Incredible. Hey, Phil, man, thanks so much for being with us, for all your incredible wisdom, for us leaders out here. Take it easy.
I've enjoyed it.
Good.
It's been great fun. Thank you. It's really, the questions are terrific, and I'm sorry if I ranted too much. But
No, good stuff. Think International. Phil Cooke, Cooke Pictures. See ya.